let's go back to structures and talk about, so ADC sets up a structure in which women are at least theoretically presumed to be able to stay at home with their children. Single mothers are presumed to be able to stay at home with their children. But tell us what happens in practice now in the rest of the 30s and into the 40s.
It's very important to remember that the ADC, the program that we call welfare, was part of the Social Security Act, which nowadays Social Security is the label we give to only really one of the programs in the Social Security Act, and that is old age pensions. ADC was a title of that law. It was gradually expanded, but there were always tensions within it. First of all, the understanding when ADC was created was that these women would be essentially clients of social workers. And social workers were both going to supervise them and also help and improve their standards of parenting. Now, this didn't always happen, and over time, the caseworkers who handled ADC caseloads became increasingly confined to just supervising. That was important because this is one of several programs in the Social Security Act in which first you had to prove that you were poor in order to get access. This was what we call means tested. It means that first you examine whether the woman had the means to support herself. The fact that it was means tested meant two things that are very important here. One is that people lost all privacy. They had to expose how much money they had in a bank. You were not allowed to own a car because that was a valuable piece of property. You could not own a house and collect aid-dependent children. The second part of the law involved what I mentioned before, and that is morals testing. You have to prove that you are a fit mother. You don't have boyfriends, you don't drink, you are not lazy, your house is neat and clean, and people were social workers were expected to go into those homes and verify the quality of the housing. These two stipulations, the means testing and the morals testing, tended to make this program very stigmatized. It was, you might call it, even an infantilizing program in which women were not treated as mistresses of their own destiny, so to speak, but as people who were supplicants and who had to apply. Very, very different from some of the other programs like Social Security old age pensions.
What I'm seeing here is a dramatic increase in class division because in addition to the fact that poor women are treated even more poorly, I'm imagining a phalanx of social workers who are rather well-educated or better educated and who are now getting secure jobs in the federal and state bureaucracies of many kinds to enforce the rules that are now being applied to poor women. So you're pitting one group of women against another?
Yes. And you know, every now and then you would have a social worker who was very, very sympathetic to clients, understood their problems, but a lot of them, either because they began to identify with the task of showing that some people were unfit, or because they were required to do that by supervisors, took on a role that was adversarial toward the women who were receiving help. But at the same time, if you look at the whole picture in the Depression, you see that women's versus men's programs within the federal government are also becoming much more unequal. If you take Social Security old age pensions, the vast majority of women, even women who worked, were not eligible because they only covered workers in very large enterprises, and those enterprises tended to be big factories or other kinds of mining or things like that that were very male jobs. And the programs for women were not an entitlement, were stigmatized, as well as receiving much lower pensions or stipends. In fact, over time, from 1935 all the way until the program was abolished in 1996, the actual value of the aid that you got from age-dependent children went steadily downwards because there were not increases that kept up with inflation. In contrast, again, the program that was designed with men in mind had regular cost of living escalator clauses. So you have several different kinds of inequalities built into these programs.